There is a saying, and I can't remember where it's at. I believe it's in the convents and in the sacristies of those convents of Mother Teresa's sisters, the Sisters of Charity, or the Missionaries of Charity, that says, as the priest is walking out the door, it's above the door as he goes to celebrate Mass, and it says, "Holy priest of God, celebrate this Mass as if it is your first Mass, as if it is your last Mass, and as if it is your only Mass." And so, when we come to Mass today, or any day, doesn't matter who is here, whether the priest celebrates Mass on his own, or if he celebrates Mass with a congregation of 1,000 people or 1,000,000 people, every Mass ought to be for the glory of God. And that is really the purpose of the Mass. The Mass is not about us. The Mass is about the worship and the glory of God that we give to Him through our worship, recognizing how He lowers Himself to us, and so we always want to elevate our worship to Him. And so you could ask the question, "Father, why are you using incense today?" Well, it's a solemnity, and so we should celebrate solemnities to the highest degree that we can. And so we use the incense, and we use all things when we can to glorify God, no matter the size of the congregation. I think there's three things for us to take from our readings and from our solemnity that we celebrate today. The first is this, our first reading, which is from the book of Numbers, which is, besides Leviticus, I believe it's one of the books in which we rarely read from in the liturgy through the 3-year cycle that we go through on weekends and holy days, but also even daily Mass. We rarely read from this book. But the importance of this reading today is in the blessing that is given today, and the blessing that God tells Moses to give to the people. The blessing, he says, is, "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace." And you've heard this blessing before. It's one of the blessings or options for a blessing of a bishop that a bishop can give to his people, or a blessing that a priest can give to his people as well. And there's this threefold calling upon the Lord in this blessing here today. In the original language of Hebrew in which this was written, you'll notice even in the book, when you follow along in the Missalette, the name of the Lord is all in capital letters, indicating that is actually the divine name of God, the Yahweh in which God revealed His name to the Israelites, and which we have come to know, in which God has revealed Himself, and so we capitalize it instead of placing the divine name in our scriptures and in the way we read them at Holy Mass. We use those capital letters to indicate that is the what we call the Tetragrammaton, the YHWH that we will often see in the scriptures. And the importance of this is that they call upon His divine name 3 times, and so this is the blessing that after the exile, when the Israelites came back and resettled Jerusalem, they only spoke the name of God at this blessing, and when they offered sacrifice in the Holy of Holies that one time a year. And then the high priest would come out and speak this blessing and speak the divine name over the people. And calling upon the name of God is this sense of making Him present in that moment. And just like when we call upon someone else's name, a friend or someone like that, we in some way make them present with us in that moment by having their name. It's also this humbling of God for Him to give us His name so we can call upon Him, and so that He lowers Himself to us and makes Himself available to us to enter into relationship with us, for us to be able to call upon His name. And we see this whenever we are wanting to talk to someone. We have this, in a sense, power over them when we know their name. And if you've ever been in a place where you just can't think of someone's name, and you want to speak to them, but you can't say their name to get their attention, think about how, in a sense, powerless you are in that moment. But when we have that name and we can call upon that name to get their attention, to call their presence to us, then there is a certain power that we don't want to lord over them, but we want to get their attention and able to and speak with them. Or for instance, when we go to pray for someone, when we call upon their name, in some way we make them present with us so we can lift them to God through our prayers for them as well. And so it's the same thing with the divine name of God. He lowers himself for us to have this sort of power in order to call upon his name to make him present to us. And this is why that second commandment of thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain is so important, because if we take the Lord's name in vain, we are calling his presence to us, and we want to do so reverently and in piety in order to make him present in that moment. The second thing about our readings today is the way in which then God gives us his name in our gospel today. And so yes, we have the divine name that is given to us in the Old Testament, but then we see the name that God desires to name his Son in our gospel. And it says, when the 8 days were completed for his circumcision, he was named Jesus. The name of Jesus is actually a derivative of Joshua, which means God saves, or it literally means salvation. And so by naming the second person of the Trinity, naming him Jesus, we are saying salvation is here among us, that salvation is here. And so we have the divine name of Jesus as the second person of the Trinity present to us. And in this naming ceremony that happens in the Jewish tradition through the circumcision, we also see that it's the first time that Jesus sheds blood, which makes us know that Jesus is uniting himself fully into the Israelite covenant, or the Mosaic covenant, or the Abrahamic covenant, in which he has united himself fully to the people of Israel, united him fully to us, taking on human form, so that he redeems all of us, not just some portion of us, but the entirety of who we are. He goes and desires to redeem all of us. And so that is what the purpose of this gospel is all about, and this naming of Jesus is all about. And so traditionally, this feast that we celebrate today was known as the circumcision of the Lord, or actually the holy name of the Lord. That's traditionally what this feast is called. But on Monday, the feast of the holy name is transferred to January 3rd. And thirdly and finally, the importance of this feast today. The title of Mary, Mary as Mother of God, is the oldest title that we give to Mary outside of her own name. The title was deemed upon Mary, and had been debated for years, but it was decided upon in 431 AD at the Council of Ephesus. At the Council of Ephesus, they were debating all of these heresies. Arianism was still around, Nestorianism was still around, one in which denied the divinity of Jesus in his humanity, one in which said his divinity just dwelt in the humanity, and so his divinity didn't actually die, and so Mary was only the mother of his humanity, but not of his divinity. And so this defining moment in history is the calling upon Mary as the Mother of God. It's a title that unifies all Christians, because in 431 there was no such thing as Orthodox and Catholic and Protestants. There was one faith, there was one Christian faith, and all Christians came to believe this. And so those who continued to deny this no longer could be called Christians, because they were denying this aspect of the faith. They were denying this dogma of the faith. And so anyone that denies this dogma is actually denying everything all the way back to 431, which is when all of Christianity was still united. The divisions didn't start happening until almost 600 years later. And so this is a unifying factor in some way for us as Christians. And so maybe it's an opportunity for us to pray to God through this title, through Mary's intercession, for all Christians to be unified in one faith as God intended for it to be. But also let us take this title upon ourselves to recognize that as we are baptized into the person of Jesus, we share in his life, and so we can call God our Father. And thus, because we are united to Christ, we can also call Mary our mother. And so let us call upon our Blessed Mother to intercede for us in a particular way throughout this new year in which we celebrate today.